What's going on, guys? Junior's Fishing Company with just a really simple shad pattern jig today. So the only thing I kind of wanted to show today was I've been blending a ton of deer hair lately. Usually in the past, a lot of the jigs that I've tied, I've kind of just, you might just put white or you might put whatever, you put a couple different colors, but I've been blending them a little bit differently. I've been looking a lot at this Bob Popovic book the last couple weeks, and in the book he kind of describes some ways to blend deer hair, and obviously when he talks I listen, so I have this is a 1/4 or 1/8 ounce Northland tungsten jig, just in chrome or something like that, super bright, really cool red eyes. I've just taken some black, white, and just like a light gray deer hair bucktail, and I've blended them together. And I'm just trying to attempt to make a little shad pattern here. There's going to be 2 stacks of bucktail and just a little bit of flash. I'm going to tie on this. I'm not going to tie down onto the shank. I'm just going to tie on the whatever molded part of this. I could easily fit just a really small rattle here, and I almost did, but I really don't have a ton of jigs with rattles on them. I don't hate rattles, but for some reason when I'm walleye fishing, I really don't use a ton of rattles. I don't know why. Some of the bass jigs I have a bunch of rattles. I have a few walleye jigs with rattles, but again, I just really don't bother with that. But if you're gonna imitate this pattern, you could easily, there's plenty of room on that shank for a rattle. I'm gonna twist this around, and I really want to be careful. I didn't take that weed guard off. I believe I've done it in the past where I have just filed them down, but if that's tungsten, it will not go anywhere, even with a file. Tungsten is about as hard as something can get. So I'm really just gonna kind of spin it right up into those little prongs, and then I'll just tie it down here. You're not gonna be able to see that little gap, especially when I put this second stack of deer hair down by my head anyway. You're really not gonna be able to notice that. And that's where the hook point is anyway. So if you want to get technical, you could say, well, it leaves the hook point open a little bit more. So I'm going to put down, the flash that I'm using is just kind of like your standard holographic flashabou. I'm not going to put a ton, just because this head is just crazy flashy to begin with. But I know eventually this will probably end up chipping, this head, especially if you use it on a river or somewhere with a ton of rocks or something like that. I'll bet this paint probably chips pretty easily. And so I just want a little flash in there just in case that does happen. And I'm just gonna kind of wrap this up onto the top. I don't really feel like cutting this off, so what I'm gonna do, I'll just kind of split that and fold that down, and I can just get some tight wraps onto there. Not worried about trimming any of this deer hair. I'm actually going to put just a little bit of super glue down on this, just because I don't want that flash to slip out. So I'm just going to do that instead of adding a ton of wraps to it. I'll just put some super glue down, and then that stuff is not going anywhere anytime soon. So I'll come up to my head. I'm going to cord up my thread while I get my next stack. This is not a lot of hair. I don't know if it looks like that in the camera, but this is going to be a very thin jig, about 4 inches, maybe even just a little bit less. Actually, maybe even a little bit longer. There's just some really thin hairs on the back of that. Just that gray was just a little bit longer. So most of the longer fibers in this are going to be gray, which is totally fine. I'm just going for black, white, just a traditional shad pattern jig. So I'm going to get this trimmed up, and I can kind of check and see I want this to be about, you can see this hair right there, that's a lot longer. I want it to be about 1/2 an inch, 3/4 of an inch shorter than that first stack. So I'm going to trim off, I don't know, that's not 1/4 inch, I'd say. I'll trim that off, and I'll get this down right by my head. Get that cinched down. There should be a little bit of flare in this one. I got this second stack kind of from closer to the bottom on most of them. It's hard to find when you blend. The one big problem I've seen or I've experienced when you're trying to blend all these different colored jigs and baits and stuff like that, you really want similar hair on all the tails. So when I'm blending white, silver, and black, I don't want the black to be super airy and the white to be really curly. You don't want different variations in your hair. And so that's kind of the trickiest part. I'm imagining Bob Popovic probably has 1,000 deer tails, and so you have the luxury of just going with a fine-tooth comb into all your tails and finding ones that are gonna blend really well together. I don't have that many tails. I have a lot of tails, but it can be really tricky if you're trying to blend like a light blue and yellow. You want those hairs long and straight, curly, short, whatever. You want them to be similar. And so that can just be, for anyone out there that's gonna start blending hair like this, you want to make sure that you've got hair that's the same. So I'm going to go and trim this up. I'll put a link in the description below. I'm going to clean this collar up a little bit, and that should be it. All right, so I cleaned it up, put some head cement down. It's a little bit, the hair's a little bit long. This is a pretty short shanked hook. The hook point is about right here. So I have about half of my length that's off, which is going to add some movement to the bait. But you just got to be careful. You always want to have a couple little trailer hooks with you or something like that. If you're getting just nipped in the tail, stuff like that, you're going to want something with this. You're going to want a little trailer hook or something that you can just quickly attach if you're going to need it. But really simple, really, really flashy, something I would use maybe even in clear water on a sunny day. That sun is just going to absolutely shine right off this head. Northland tackle, tungsten jig, 1/8 ounce, about 4 inches, maybe just a little bit longer. Quick tie. You can pump these out really, really quick. Junior's Fishing Company. Like and subscribe. Drop some comments below. We'll see you on the next one.